Let's bring in Dana Loesch, the NRA spokesperson, to talk about this. Dana, so many people are asking questions. How could this happen? Air Force didn't do their job. They didn't put him in the national database, but it has nothing to do with gun control, right?
Well, and that's the big question, and thank you all so much for having me on this morning. And Stephen Willeford is a hero, as is Johnny Langendorf. This was a God thing that Stephen Willeford was there and was able to engage and prevent this from even being worse than it already was. I'm so grateful for those two men. But to your question, we've been told for so long by a lot of the politicians that are calling for gun control and called for gun control in the hours after this tragedy. We've been promised by them that the system was going to work and that the background check system in place, the NIC system, by the way, that the NRA pioneered and created, that this was going to work. The NRA has fought for 20 years to make sure that people who are adjudicated mentally unfit, that these records are added to the system. But then we keep seeing these occurrences that are taking place, and people who are able to purchase a firearm because of human error or because they fell through the system. These laws need to work, and they need to be enforced. And I want to make a huge point here, just to put this in numbers for people to understand. Think about it like this. 38 states report fewer than 80% of felony convictions to the system. That means that there are 7 million convictions that are left out there in the dark.
Right.
Is that the next Aurora? Is that an Aurora theater? Is that another individual like this murderer? This is why this law needs to be enforced. But politicians have to call for those records to be submitted, those who are adjudicated mentally unfit and who have been through their due process, and they have their due process with this. That's the huge thing. And also, when you look at felony convictions, there is a decrease in prosecutions for felony gun charges. We've talked about this before on your program. And in 2010, here you had 80,000 prohibited possessors that tried to purchase a firearm through their 4473. That's an actionable offense. And yet, guess how many of those were prosecuted? 44. Wow. It reminded me of the time that Joe Biden told a bunch of reporters on a conference call. The Daily Caller reported this. He said, and I quote, "We simply do not have the time to go and prosecute everyone who lies on a 4473. Guys, this has to change, and politicians have to call for it, especially the ones calling for gun control today.
That's right, because the shooter did check a box. He lied there. Plus, the Air Force fell down, and they allowed him to then get that gun. Didn't get a dishonorable discharge. He had what is called a bad conduct designation. But, Dana, going back to your earlier point, saluting the barefoot plumber, the sharpshooter, who actually made things could have been a lot worse. You've neglected to mention he was at one point in his life an NRA instructor.
And that's what I was coming to, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, and thank you for that. And an NRA member, I might add. He's a certified NRA instructor and an NRA member. One of the good guys that authorities said earlier and told the press they can attribute to the fact that there was no further loss of life. And thank heavens that there was. This man, I know he doesn't consider himself a hero, but I do, and I know his friends do. And I know other people who could have been impacted. We don't know where this murderer was going to go after this. But the fact that he was engaged, and statistically, that's what happens. When evil is engaged by good, evil flees. These evil guys flee. We've seen that in FBI uniform crime reports. We've seen that in crime statistics. We've seen that in law enforcement write-ups on cases. It flees.
All right. Dana Loesch joining us from Texas. Dana, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana.